All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Fork Over the Ring, where we all know the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And today we are going to be making my white Hennessy double crusted apple cobbler with homemade caramel and whipped cream. Guys, this recipe is super easy, like they usually are, and it's really good. So stay tuned. To get started, what we're going to do is start off with 2.5 cups of flour, 2 sticks of butter that have been cubed. That roughly equals out to about 2 pounds of butter. And you're going to go ahead, like I said, cube those up. They have to be cold, cold, cold. And we're also going to use 6 tablespoons of ice cold water. So I actually have ice cubes in my water to ensure that it's cold. Cold water helps to create a firm dough, whereas warm water helps it to expand. And then a little bit of salt, maybe like a half a teaspoon, and 1 full tablespoon of white sugar, granulated sugar. So you start off with going ahead and you're going to mix together your butter and your flour just until they're a little incorporated. And then your water is going to be what you use to mend it all together. Your flour is really important, whether it's cobbler or pie. And this flour you can use, or this dough rather, I'm sorry, you guys can use for pies as well. It's my universal dough. So I use this one minus the sugar for chicken pot pies. I use it for everything. So this is the dough that you want to use. Add the water to mix it together. And as you can see, it's starting to form. And once it's like all the way solid together around the whisk, and you don't need the mixer, you can do it by hand. It's done. Then I take it and I go ahead and I put it on my cutting board. I split it into two even parts. And I am going to refrigerate this for at least an hour. I didn't prep in time, so I actually froze it for about 15 minutes, and it got what I needed. Next, I'm going to start off with apples. I do have 5 different apples here. I have a Granny Smith apple, a Gala apple, a Pink Lady apple. As you can see, I was about to start peeling them, then I got lazy, so I decided just to cut them on up. The apple choice is really based off what you like. Some of the apples I have here are a little more bitter in taste. Some of them are a little more sweet. So I like to go ahead and add a variety of apples to my meals when I'm cooking with them, especially for pies or cobblers like this one, because it allows you to go through and have a nice, good taste when it comes to them all being cooked together and when you eat them. So I like it this way. As you can see, I'm making my slices fairly thin. They are going to cook down a little more, but this way I get a little bit of uniformity throughout the meal. And it's pretty good. Make sure that you core them. And although I am using apples today for this particular cobbler, you do know that you can go ahead at any time and swap this out and use peaches. If you're going to use peaches, you can definitely use fresh peaches, but I would suggest using frozen ones. For this, if you want to cut out some time, although I prefer to make my dough, God tastes so much better. You can use store-bought dough and you can use canned apples, but I think you'd really appreciate it using real apples. And 5 may seem like a lot, but my cast iron skillet's pretty big, so that's why I have so many. And then I go ahead and I coat them in flour. And you're going to put that to the side for a moment. The flour layer is going to act as a thickening agent. Next, we're going to go through on our cutting board. I am taking, or any flat surface, I'm taking some flour to spread it out. I'm taking 1/2 of my dough, and I'm going to first knead it out, as you can see, to make it a little bit more pliable so that you can work with it. And after you go ahead and do that, you're going to roll it out. When you roll it, your goal isn't to have a nice uniform looking roll. I can be the first to say that I am not good at having a neat rollout, but I'm also very realistic, like I'm sure most of you guys are at home. I flip it over just a few times to make it flaky. So the more fold you put into your dough, so you roll it out, then fold it again, the flakier it'll be. And that's for anything. And I like my dough pretty flaky, so I did it about 3 times here. You can keep doing it, but this part is going to be for our bottom dough. So I am literally just rolling this out as best I can. Just like I told you guys in our cinnamon roll video, if you do not have a rolling pin, don't worry. If you have a wine bottle, that works too. Any liquor bottle, because they're typically glass, and they can be a little heavy. So those are bottles you want to use. I'm going to go ahead, like I said, and roll this out some more so that it can cover the bottom of my cast iron skillet. As you can see, I did puncture a hole in it, but you just kind of fold it back over itself and re-roll it out, and you'll be totally fine. Then once you're done, you take that, you're going to lift it up and put it at the bottom of a greased cast iron skillet, and you're going to bake that for 15 minutes just so that your bottom crust can be nice and crispy when they start to put the apples in. Then in a separate skillet, I'm going to go through, I start off with 1 stick of butter, and I let that melt on down. From adding that 1 stick of butter, you're going to then go to, and this is what we're going to use to make our filling for our cobbler. Again, I'm using it for the cobbler, but if you happen this or whatever you want to do, you can actually use the same thing for crust. I start off with lemon zest from just about a whole lemon. I pretty much just did all of the lemon except for where you're going to see where the sticker is. Then I go ahead and I add my apples in and I try to mix those down. Like I said earlier, the flour that we put on the apples acts as a thickening agent. Then I add 1 cup of brown sugar, 1 full cup of white sugar or granulated sugar, and then I add about, you're going to, again, continue mixing those up. Then I'm going to add totally about 1.5 cups of white Hennessy. If you don't have that, you can use regular Hennessy. I just like the taste of the white Hennessy when it cooks down. I also do this with honey jack. Then I add a tablespoon of vanilla, 2 cinnamon sticks, nutmeg. I also add a little bit of salt just to taste, and I add the juice from a lemon. If you don't have a juicer for your lemon, you can just, like I just did, put your fingers underneath, use that to catch the seeds, and then you're good to go. So remember, guys, again, it's nutmeg, it's cinnamon sticks. You're going to leave the cinnamon sticks in there the whole time, the lemon juice and the vanilla, and apples and flour and your sugar. This is actually a pretty simple recipe. Cook those for 15 minutes. Then you're going to go through and you're going to start rolling out your top dough. Now, this part is where your creativity comes in. It doesn't have to be like, what's the word? Like, it doesn't have to be fancy because, y'all, I'm a little lazy. As y'all saw, when it even came to the apples, what I do, I cut them with the skin still on it. So, do what you want to do with it. I go ahead, like I said, make it a little more pliable. Then I roll it out. And as you're going to see, I'm going to do what the easiest thing for me at this moment is, and that is going to be to put little slices in it. If you want, you can definitely go through and use a cookie cutter and like just layer on designs on top. It's whatever you're comfortable with doing. I just know my skill set and what I can and cannot do. So roll it as thin as you can. Then you're going to go through after you roll it on out, and you are going to use, I'm using a pizza cutter, and I'm going to cut off the parts that are uneven there. That way I know I have even slices. And then I make 8 slices through. They're not even of the dough so that I can later on put that on top of my cobbler. So as you can see, the dough, our bottom dough that we baked for 15 minutes, it is not like nice and crispy and brown, but it doesn't have to be. Our goal is simply to make it so that it starts to cook because it's going to finish cooking once you put everything else in the oven. So I'll go ahead and I'll layer in my apples. You can't just dump it in. I didn't do that at first because I was afraid that I had too many. And I'm leaving my cinnamon sticks inside so that flavor can continue to come out of them and cook while everything is going on. So dump everything inside of the cast iron skillet with the bottom crust on it. And then you're going to go ahead and start laying your strips forward down. Now, I know there may be a better method to doing this. Like I told y'all earlier, I know how to make my food taste good, but this whole decorating technique part, I ain't that good at. But it's okay because I know once it comes out of the oven and it's nice and golden brown, it don't matter what design you put on there, it's going to look amazing. And my favorite part of this is the crust. So I try to put as much as possible on while it still looks neat. And then I take an egg wash and I put that right on top. So that you'll probably see the little eggs there now. I take 1 large egg and I mix it with water with a brush, and I kind of brush it across, and I put my extra dough pieces on the side because that's the part I like. So after that, then you're going to go ahead, put that in the oven on 350 for about 35 to 40 minutes. And we are going to start on our whipped cream. For that, I take 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and about a tablespoon of vanilla. And you're going to mix that on up in your mixer. You do have to be careful for this because you can over whip heavy cream and it'll turn into butter. That's not what we want here. We simply just want whipped cream. So you're going to go ahead and I mix this I kind of go back and forth between high and medium speeds for about 5 minutes. And it comes out to the perfect whipped cream. The beautiful thing about this whipped cream mixture as well is make your whipped cream. You can always take this later and mix it in with condensed milk, and you can put it in the freezer for no churn ice cream. If you guys want a video on that, please let me know and I will definitely make it. But you, like I said earlier, you have to be careful because you want it to be whipped cream, not butter. You don't want it to be stiff. You want it to be just like nice, airy, and fluffy so that it complements your ice cream, your cobbler, and everything else well. So go ahead and keep on mixing that. No more than 5 minutes. Alternating between medium and high speeds, because what happens is as the air mixes into it, that's how whipped cream is created, which is why typically it's in a can that you put out. And I just test mine quite often just to make sure that it is not being over whipped or under whipped. And you'll start seeing like little peaks starting to form in it. That's how you know it's done. Taste it and you should be good to go. Then we're going to start with our caramel. So for our caramel, I'm actually taking the same pan that has like the leftover apple stuff in it from our filling. I add a very little bit of butter to it. This is not, maybe like a tablespoon of butter. Then I go through and I add brown sugar to start off with. So we're going to add half a cup of brown sugar. Then we're going to add half a cup of heavy whipping cream. I'm actually going to add another tablespoon to it because I had just a tablespoon left and I want to use it all up. You're going to go ahead and you're going to start whisking it down. I'm using a plastic whisk instead of the gold one you saw earlier so that I didn't mess my stuff up. Then I go through and I add vanilla to it, and I also add some more of the white Hennessy. So about a tablespoon of vanilla, a tablespoon of white Hennessy, and then I'm going to go through after the brown sugar melts, and I'm going to add half a cup of granulated sugar again. And you're going to let this cook maybe for about 5 to 6 minutes, just until everything is kind of melted down. It's not going to look thick in the pan. It gets thicker as it cools off, but you don't want to burn your caramel. So this is actually going to be the perfect way it is. Once you see that everything is cooked down and you can't see any sugar still inside, give it a taste and you should be good to go. And that is going to be like the most difficult part of your entire cooking process, just because you don't want to burn the caramel. That is one thing that you can burn. But now you have white Hennessy caramel, and like I said, even with the pie or the cobbler, you can swap out liquors for this or not use liquor at all. It's really your choice. After that, then your only job left is to go ahead and stack on all this together. So what I do is I start off with some cobbler in the bowl. It's really impossible to make cobbler cute when you put it in a bowl. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure you get all that crust in there because, again, that's the good part. After you get that in there, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to add on some ice cream. This is the ice cream that I made myself. So if you guys want that recipe, please let me know and I will come up. Then I layer on some of our white Hennessy caramel. Then some of our homemade whipped cream and more caramel. And there we go. We have our double crusted white Hennessy apple pie with homemade whipped cream and white Hennessy caramel. Please let me know what you guys think about this video. If you have any questions, leave them below. I will see you on the next video. And make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Thank you.